Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Claire Robinson. I'm the Customer Relationship Manager here at KRC. So thank you all for joining us for our monthly Agile webinar. Today's webinar is Understanding Agile, Mastering the Basics and How to Move Forward. If you want to access any of our previous webinar recordings, you can do this on our website, which is AgileKRC.com. Just click on the resources tab and then click on webinars. You'll also be able to sign up for next month's webinar on that page also. You can also download today's slides after the webinar, which again, AgileKRC.com, and it's under that resources tab under free downloads. So I'm shortly going to pass you over to your presenter, Keith Richards, but just before I do, just let me point out a couple of the features of the control panel, just in case this is your first time using the software. So if you look at the top right hand side of your screen, you'll see an orange box with a white arrow inside. You can click on this to maximize or minimize your control panel. If you'd like to ask a question, just type your questions into the question box and Keith will take as many as he can at the end. So I'm now going to pass you over to your presenter, Keith Richards.
Thank you very much, Claire, and welcome everybody to another webinar. We've been doing this for over a year now. The feedback we're getting is extremely positive, and just looking through the people who are attending today, many people from far and wide. Just again to give some name checks to some of the countries that are attending, a lot of people from Britain and Europe, but we've got people today from Hong Kong, Australia, India, and also Bulgaria and the Philippines. So thank you very much. And I've also gone through the names in terms of the registration, and we've by far and away got very new names because we've run this this time last year, but we didn't quite know how many people would come back, and a lot of people are coming back, I guess, just to get back to the basics, because a lot of people that I find when they're going down the Agile route, sometimes they forget what the fundamentals are. They forget some of the basic rules, some of the golden rules, and that's what we're going to try and go through today during this webinar. So without any further ado, I just want to give you a little bit of information on the entry question that you went through. We were really talking about how you're getting on with your Agile, and not sure if this will make you feel very at home with the Agile webinar that we're doing at the moment or not, but there were 3% of the people responding said they're doing very well with their Agile. So if you're one of the 97%, I hope you're going to find this session really quite useful. In terms of where we're going to talk about what actually is Agile, where you can use it, what's the benefits, the upside, what's the downside, but also more importantly how you go about being Agile and going Agile. We'll also touch on some certifications and accreditations that are out there, and we should be ending around about 1:10 UK time, so that's in about 35 minutes, where we can then take questions and answers, so feel free to get your questions ready by then. We tend not to go big time on the commercials on these webinars because we're sure you want to get the information. I just briefly want to tell you where I'm coming from and where KRC is coming from. We're very much into Agile. We've been doing it for about 15-20 years, literally before the word was invented. We're very much a pioneering training company. We try and be quite different. When we go on consultancy assignments, you know, we try and look at angles and tell people exactly how it is. I'm very experienced myself in Prince 2, DSDM, Scrum, and I've been a member of the membership director for the DSDM Consortium for the last 4 years. Also a facilitator, author of Agile Project Management, a book published by TSO, and was very proud to be awarded by my peers the most valuable Agile player at the UK Agile Awards in 2011. A very important slide is now in front of everyone here, because I think since we've been looking at Agile and playing with Agile, Agile has always been a little bit odd and a little bit of a niche market. But now it has reached critical mass. It's reached the tipping point. Everybody has to have a position on Agile. Even if it is we're not really going to use much of it, you still have to have a position. You can no longer ignore it and see it as anarchic. It's mainstream. We're using it on massive engineering projects, creative projects, IT projects. We're using it all over large companies, small companies, public sector, private sector, and it is the flavour of the month, if you like. So it's no longer a case of shall we, shan't we. It's more a case of looking at what it is and trying to then decide how useful it is for your organisation. Now, I just want to start off by running a poll here to find out what sort of knowledge you have in terms of Agile. And I'm just going to, if you have a look at your screen now, something should be coming up on there. And if you would just like to vote for the Agile approach that you've at least got some knowledge of, we can get a feel for the people listening to the webinar at the moment, what's their general exposure to Agile, what they know and what they've actually seen. So bear in mind the word there is at least some knowledge of. If you'd all like to click your buttons there, and you can vote for as many as you want. You don't need to vote for one, but we can have a look and see what sort of knowledge you have at the moment. Okay, what I'm going to do now is show everybody the results there. And one of the things that we get a lot of good feedback on from these webinars is sharing other people's experience and getting other people's information in terms of what other people are finding from their Agile. So if you look at the screen now, you're going to see that no surprise at all with this, but that by far and away the most well-known, but again only by say 70% of the people listening, is actually Scrum. It's definitely the most well-known, and I'll explain where it fits in. A large vote there for DSDM, Dynamic Systems Development Method. A smaller vote for extreme programming. This is very much a software way of working in terms of Agile, and it is quite a powerful approach. It's just it is very much a programming technique that you can only use in certain situations. Personally, I think it's an extremely powerful approach. It's just you can't use it in non-IT situations, and it's very difficult to scale it up, although not impossible. The bottom two is very interesting because Kanban and Lean have always been around, but they're actually becoming a lot more in vogue. The idea of continuous flow with Kanban, and 1 in 5 people that are on this webinar have had some exposure to it. And it does seem to be, along maybe with the growth of DSDM at the moment, it does seem to be the fast-moving water as we sort of look forward to 2013. So this gives you an idea of what people are looking at, but in terms of what they've come across in terms of the experience of Agile approaches. But as I say, these are what I call the regular suspects in terms of approaches, because they are actually methods or approaches. They're not just techniques, and I'll explain what I mean by that in a moment. So if I just remove that poll and move on to the next slide. Most people try and define Agile by looking at the Agile Manifesto, and this is the slide there showing you everything about the Agile Manifesto. We're trying to develop software in better ways, and while you're reading the sort of 4 lines in the middle, bear in mind the 2 lines at the bottom. The whole point of the manifesto is that it's the thing on the left that's sort of more desirable than the things on the right. It's not a question of things on the left are good, things on the right are bad. It's more a case of there's more value in those that are on the left. Now, if you spoke to 1,000 people in the Agile community and wanted a definition of Agile, you'd probably find 85% of people would point you to this. Although I think it's good, I'm not a great fan of it, and at KRC we don't tend to want to sit on the fence. We try and tell you like it is. And to me, there's some limitations to it. Some are quite striking, and the first one is the fact the word software is mentioned twice. It seems you can only use Agile for software. Well, definitely that's where the heritage has come from, but certainly at KRC we're finding many customers are not using software at all on their projects, yet they can still use Agile. And in fact, more importantly, is to see projects and business change as more, as I say, more of a business change than an IT project. And what we find is when organisations start talking about delivering business benefit and business change, as opposed to delivering IT systems, that's one of the hallmarks of somebody moving to a more business-focused way of working. It's also worth pointing out that the idea of following a plan I don't think is a bad thing at all. You've always got to have a plan. If you haven't got a plan, you're planning to fail. Now, the idea of responding to change, I'm all for, and I think this is one of the good parts of the Agile Manifesto. But as I say, some of the things are slightly negative there, which I don't really think gives a true reflection of what Agile is. I do find it somewhat ironic that one of the left-hand side statements there, responding to change, is fundamental to Agile, yet the Agile Manifesto hasn't changed since 2001. So I do find that somewhat ironic. So what is perceived as Agile? And we've just mentioned in that poll things like Scrum, Extreme Programming, DSDM, but I just want to run some things past you to explain what people think is Agile and perceive as Agile. Because part of this webinar is to try to get you to know the basics and really understand what Agile is and not be sort of distracted by a lot of things that you might read on the internet or a lot of the perceptions. So here are some standard things you're going to hear when you're talking about Agile, doing Agile, researching Agile. And there's things like user stories and index cards. So we write our requirements with user stories. We might write them on post-it notes or index cards and put them on the wall. We're having daily stand-ups, so at the beginning of every day, a 10-minute discussion on progress is called a daily stand-up or a scrum meeting. The use of whiteboards, people talking about showing progress with burn-down charts. But it's things like DSDM, Scrum, Lean, Kanban and XP that are actually Agile approaches. The 3 bullet points above are actually just techniques. So one of the first points I want everyone to really realize is that you could be in a Prince 2 environment or an APM environment or whatever environment, and if you're using user stories and stand-ups and burn down charts, that doesn't mean you're Agile, it means you're using some Agile techniques. There's nothing wrong with a daily meeting, it's a really good idea, but you can use a daily meeting on a Prince 2 project. That doesn't mean to say you're Agile, it just means to say you're using stand-up meetings. Pair programming is something used in extreme programming, and the reason that is there is I remember one customer coming up to me slightly horrified. They'd had a consultant come in and tell them unless you're pair programming, you're not Agile. Now again, that's not the case. If you're using XP, you might be using pair programming, but again, it's a technique. It doesn't mean to say you're Agile. People use various catchphrases like Yagni, meaning you ain't going to need it, or Icky Wissy, meaning I'll know it when I see it. And just because you're using these sort of techniques, and again, we quite like them at KRC and they go very well, but it's not actually, it doesn't mean to say you're Agile, you're just using these techniques. Now there's other more general terms like people say we're being responsive and adaptable and flexible. Well, you can say that, but what exactly are you doing? And I just want to end on 2 sort of bigger picture items, and that is one area particularly of Agile is called Agile testing, certainly in the software area, in the software market. This is a huge thing. Automated testing, what's called test-driven development, writing tests, then writing code. This is a whole area in its own right. So when you're talking about your organization going Agile or adopting Agile, you really need to work out where we're using Agile and get everything lined up in the right place. Because Agile testing is a niche area. You could go to a conference on 3 days on Agile testing, but it is just one small area of software development. And what we try to do at KRC is to get organizations to embrace the whole Agile thing across the whole area at a board level, at a governance level, at a project management level, at a business engagement level. And this is when you really do get Agile to tick. And this idea of an Agile organization, you start to think and act in a sort of an Agile way. So there's a lot of perceptions about Agile, and what I want to do is, if you like, come off the fence and tell you what we see as Agile, what actually is Agile. How do you know you're being Agile? And a lot of it is about behaviors and doing what's going to come up in the list on your screen. The first big thing about Agile is what's technically called scope tolerant. Now that's a slightly complicated, fancy description, but what it means is you're feature focused. You're aiming at what you deliver. So if you have 100 features to deliver or 100 requirements or you've outlined the scope of 100 ideas that you're trying to achieve. It's playing with these ideas that is inherently an agile way of working. So if we're struggling to hit a deadline or there's a problem, we might drop some of the features out. So this idea of using the features or the requirements as your contingency and your variable is fundamental to the agile way of working. Another fundamental to Agile is the idea of being collaborative. I don't believe you can work Agile if you're not being collaborative amongst your team. So if it is a software situation, I'd want the programmers working with the testers, working with the business analysts. A fundamentally collaborative way of working, not silos or trying to represent a waterfall type paradigm. Equally, I'd want the technical people, the engineers, the IT people working with the business in a collaborative way. I often say to my customers, this doesn't mean to say we have to have a team hug in the morning or we need to sing a song together. It just means, are you working in your own silo or are you looking at a bigger picture? Without collaboration, I don't believe Agile will work. Agile is inherently iterative. You'll often see loops being drawn when we're talking about Agile, the idea of going around, learning, adapting. The secret's not to go around too much. And if you go around something 3 times, refine it, I think you'll be in a good place. If you're on iteration 10, 11, 12 of the same idea, it either means you're gold plating or it means you've set out not really knowing what you're trying to do. Quite a few of you mentioned the sort of lean and Kanban, and this is very much in what I call the inspect and adapt area of Agile. So it's continually looking at your process on a daily basis. That's where the stand-ups are quite useful. What worked, what doesn't work. This isn't the same as a project review or a review at every 6 weeks to have a look at how things are going. It is a constant analysis of everything you're doing. So if you come up with a problem or a bug, trace the root to the root cause, make a change to the process and go forward that way. This is why the Japanese are so famous in terms of car manufacture, because they've just relentlessly done this idea of inspect and adapt. As per the Agile Manifesto, yes, we've got to be responsive to change, change-friendly. I've just got a question for all of you listening, and you don't need to type anything in to reply here, but I just want you to think about the first word that comes into your head. And what I'm getting at is, what is the first word that comes into your head when a customer or a business representative comes up to you and says, I've changed my mind? Now, most people, and I'd say 95% of people, don't have a positive view of that. Some of you have probably said something rude. I do meet people who, their answer's no, or they roll their eyes. But in Agile, you are change friendly. You accept change, and the reason you accept it is because you know that the customer or the business doesn't know exactly what they want yet. Now, don't worry about this. It doesn't mean to say you pander to all of their demands. Because you're using scope tolerance at the top of the screen here, it means that you can trade things in and trade things out. So if they come up with a new idea, you quite simply say, hey, that's great news. What are you going to trade out? And this is how we work in terms of the Agile way of working. Importantly, don't confuse responding to change with what I call the goalposts moving. If the fundamentals of the project are changing, that's a different problem. That means we need to reevaluate and escalate the issue there. But if it's changed to the detail, then we need to be friendly and responsive to it. Agile is very much about incremental build, the idea of working in step-by-steps, don't deliver everything at once. And the reasons for incremental build is to get feedback, is to get early delivery of business benefit, and to de-risk the whole thing you're working on. Any area you look at in best practice will always say build and deliver incrementally. If you're getting your Agile to work really well, you're well engaged with your customer. This is where certain methods like DSDM are very powerful. They have sort of 4 or 5 business roles in how to link into the business. Some Agile methods only have one, called product owner. There are limitations there. There's risks to just having one single point of contact. But the main thing you have to do with Agile is you need to embrace and engage with the business. And that doesn't mean, say, engaging through the documentation. It means engaging, with the actual people. A few more hallmarks of Agile, the idea of being communication focused. Are we just moving documents around the project, or are we using face-to-face, phone, visuals, models, prototypes, facilitated workshops? If you can really get your communication to go, and at KRC we use the term rich, if you can really get your communication rich, you've got more chance of success. Now the final two things on the screen there are what's called time focus and quality focus. And this really is the holy grail of Agile. If we take the top point there, scope tolerance, and we aim to hit deadlines and protect quality by reducing the amount of work we're doing, i.e. delivering, then we're getting two very big, ticks in the box, for want of a better word. We're getting two massive goals that we're achieving. If we can keep hitting deadlines over 2 weeks, 3 months, a year, we get a lot of benefit. We get control, we get credibility. And if we can also make sure that what we're doing is well designed, well documented, well tested, we've got what's called low cost of ownership. So it's those bottom two that if you get your Agile to work really well, you get these two things. If you like, you could say you get them for free. Now, most traditional approaches aren't built to aim at giving you on time and on quality because often the scope is fixed. In Agile, the scope isn't fixed. This means we can bring it in on time and we can hit the right quality expectation. So who can actually use Agile? Well, short answer is anybody can, but we need to be clear about some facts that are out there in the marketplace, and that is that currently it's just about all software. But this is changing with the advent of APMG moving into the accreditation of Agile project management. We at KRC are finding that probably 40% of our customers on public scheduled training are non-IT. They're coming from anything, you know, all the way from construction, nuclear physics, you name it. These guys are coming up on our courses, and a lot of them are just zero IT. And I'd say the figure we're looking at the moment, we're seeing is 35 to 40%. Another thing to be aware of is a lot of Agile is in the business as usual area, and by that I mean it's the to-do list, it's the modifications, enhancements, the smaller jobs. What Agile doesn't fit too easily with in the past and post-Agile Manifesto is what I call the project space. And this is where the big change which has created the tipping point is that things like DSDM and Agile PM have suddenly moved the whole Agile marketplace into a more scaled up that is a lot more use to a lot more organizations. So as I say, the move is more from, say, software delivery down at the product level, more into the idea of a generic look at a whole project, a holistic business change view, if you like. Now, will it go up to program level? I've been in this for, as I say, 15, 20 years, and I would think in about, say, 4 or 5 years, I think you'll find it, Agile will be impregnated quite heavily into the program strategic layer. I have to be honest though and say I don't think it's there yet. People are trying things and having some successes, but I think the first thing to get in the next 2 years maybe is to get it established at the project level. But importantly, you need to know what works at the right, what works at the right level. There's no point just going Agile. Where are we at the program level? Where are we at the project level? Where are we at the product delivery level? And you need to know which part of Agile works at all of these levels. So what are the benefits of Agile? It's a very important point for everybody listening to this webinar. Is don't just go Agile because you've heard it's worth doing or it's the next big thing. You really need to know what you're trying to achieve. So what are your problems? And classically, the problems that people are having on a project at the moment are things like lateness, quality issues, defects. The classic one we hear more than anything is probably communication errors, cost overruns, change in scope. These are all facts of life, and Agile addresses all of these. Agile takes these head on and says these are facts of life and this is how we're going to try and solve them. Again, I'm not saying it's easy, and there's certain things that Agile finds hard, but it's certainly trying to take on some of the regular problems that we're having on projects at the moment. So the thing you can get with Agile is you can get on time. If you're willing to negotiate with the scope, if you're willing to trade features, you can get on time. And in this day and age, that is a hugely important thing. The picture on the right-hand side there is something called a flip. It's a camcorder that's released by Cisco. Very, very limited feature set in terms of what it can do. But the irony about this thing is that it became an extremely successful product, but equally quickly became extinct as this technology moved to a telephone. The cradle-to-grave life cycle of that flip there is actually 4 years. Whereas in the past, if you think about a video cassette recorder, those life cycles were things like 25 years. Now, I don't mind what industry you're in, and looking through the registration list and attendee lists for this webinar, there's a multitude of industries and organizations and sectors that people are in. But anybody can use Agile, and anybody needs to be aware of this time focus. Nobody is immune to the fact we've got to move quicker and we've got to hit deadlines. You know, 1 month and 3 months is a long time for most people. Therefore, we need to harness this on-time side of what Agile gives us. If we're on time, it caps budget. It helps us restrict the amount of overspend in terms of, if you like, money. There's a question mark by the word on budget there, and that is because I don't really think Agile is about saving money. It is about being on time and protecting quality. There is an argument to say that Agile isn't necessarily any cheaper, but one thing for certain is you won't have those overruns. You won't have the overtime bill. You won't have the bill for a 20% overrun on your project. And again, what Agile's trying to do is build the right thing in the right way. So if we can adapt to the information coming out of a project or a piece of work, we can flex the requirements to get a more accurate solution for what the customer wants or what the business wants. Now, if we do that, we then get a couple of things. First off, we get something called buy-in. If we've worked with the customer to build something and responded to their changes, they're more likely to own the output. And equally, if we've traded out some of the features in order to make sure we've had plenty of time for testing and documentation, then going forward the thing we deliver won't be, if you like, error prone or hard to maintain. We'll have what's called a low cost of ownership. In terms of the risks and problems with Agile, this is what you need to be aware of when you're on your Agile journey. Firstly, it does mean changing the way you work. There's an interesting line there, compromise, 95% solutions. Now, I've been doing this for ages, and a lot of our consultants are totally used to this, and most organizations we deal with now are so happy to have 95% of it, but if it's on time and it's well built and they've handled changes on the way, they are delighted. But trust me, we still meet people who have a mental block here. They can't see as 95% is anything other than 5% missing and it's not perfect. Agile is not about perfect. Well, you could say it's about perfect. What you deliver is perfect, but you're not going to deliver everything. Again, more risks with Agile is it has to be, some fundamentals need to be in place, like collaboration. We've also got to be very careful with some of the problems with Agile. The viral spread, a few ideas move around the organization, and it creates what are called bad mutations, as in a few ideas come in, but they're not actually really a really good idea. My favorite one, it's going back a while, but there was a stand-up meeting run every morning, and it was for 45 people, and it lasted 60 minutes. That's not a cool move. Starting with the backlog is another risk in terms of Agile. Most people think that's where Agile starts, but that is a problem, because that might be the case in a product environment where you've got an existing product, but certainly in the wider context of your organization and projects, you don't start with a backlog. You start with a business case. You start with upfront work. So be very careful you don't fall into that trap in Agile. And a couple more things. Emergence, the idea of, well, it doesn't matter about the architecture, that will come out in the wash, that, you know, it will emerge. Well, it might if you're starting from what's called a greenfield site or a blank sheet of paper, but most people aren't in that situation. Again, looking through the attendee list, some massive organizations involved. You can't just start a project and we'll work out how we'll architect it later. You can't go down that route. And also beware of one very tempting thing in Agile, which is called self-organizing. By and large, I agree totally with self-organizing, but you have to be careful. This can soon sort of morph into self-managing, and I don't see self-managing work particularly well when people try it. It's worked one or two times, but the vast majority of the times it doesn't work. You still need a single point of contact. I don't like the expression, but I've often heard it referred to as single ringable neck. You need to know who's in charge of a team. They don't control or run the team, and I'd still want them to be facilitative, but self-organizing is good. Just be very careful with this concept called self-managing, where the whole team takes the blame and the whole team takes the praise. I find that teams are quite happy to collectively take the praise, but collective blame, there's normally a little bit of finger pointing going on. Now, what I want you to have a sort of look at now is something we call Agile transformation, and if you're looking at Agile and you want to reap the benefits of Agile, the first thing that we try to get our customers to understand, and hopefully in terms of the basics for the people listening to the webinar, is I want you to see this as a journey. It isn't a case of a training course and off we go. What Agile is very much about is a journey, and it's going to take you a while. So the first thing we always recommend when you're thinking of going down the Agile route is having some sort of assessment. Where are you? Why are you trying to do it? Who's in charge of this change? How are you going to justify going Agile? Don't just go Agile. You need to come up with your problem. You need to come up with your justification. What we then do at KRC is something called the ignition phase. So once we've done the assessment and we learn where you are, because what we don't do is come in and go, you need to do this. The first thing we do is understand your situation and tailor things to suit your individual needs. So there's training, piloting, mentoring, how you're communicating the change, and adjusting and evolving your existing processes. Again, looking at the list of people on the webinar today, some people have got very good processes, heavily documented from their engineering heritage, if you like, whereas others are small companies that are almost bereft of any process. So this is why we need to work out where you are, and it's a question of taking what you've got that works and keeping it, and just adding and adjusting and evolving your processes. The third thing you then do, which is, if you like, the big part, is then transition. So you move in the new Agile techniques and such like, and we break this down into sort of three areas really, what we call transition, the moving to this at scale, the realization, checking how it's going, and optimizing, as in improving and building on successes. Now this means, and we're being very simplistic here, this means looking at things like COEs, which are called Centre of Excellences, looking at what competencies you've got, looking at how you're delivering, looking at the tooling that you're actually using at your organisation. Now this is a transformation plan, and if you want to know more about this and what it entails, can you get in touch, maybe drop Claire an email, because we've got a sort of a template, if you like, of how that journey would look, and we'd be more than happy to share that with you. Just looking at how we are for time, and we're doing fine, so I'm going to do another poll. So I'm going to give you poll number 4, and I'm going to ask you a question here. And I remember when we did this 12 months ago, we got some quite interesting answers. So the question I have for you is, how long do you think it takes an organisation? Let's assume the organisation is, 200 people or 2,000 people. I don't mean an organisation of 5 or 20 million. But how long do you think it takes an organisation to change to an Agile way of working? So looking at this Agile transformation that we're talking about. I'm getting some very interesting answers. I'll let the poll run another 10 or 15 seconds. Yes, very interesting answers, particularly because I remember what the answers were last year. So I'm now going to close the polls. Thanks everyone for voting. I'm going to share the results with you. Now, as you can see there, the really, really good news, and I'm really pleased with the answer here, is the really good news is nobody thinks it's going to take a few weeks or a few days. I can assure you quite a few people, when we did the webinar this time last year, thought it took weeks. And the majority, I'm pleased to say, realised this is quite a long journey. To give you an indication, a customer I was talking to recently was listening to the webinar, and I made it very clear that in terms of if you're a company of, say, I don't know, 500, 1,000, to get some real benefits from an Agile transformation, you'll be looking at 12 to 18 months before you start going, wow. Don't get me wrong, within 2 months, 4 months, 6 months, you can get some benefits and get some wins. But you suddenly start, as the expression goes, cooking on gas when you're down the line 12 months, 18 months. So that's the sort of timescales that I want you to look at. And this person I was talking to came up to me at a conference and just said, do you know, I'm really pleased you said that because you were bang on. And I'm not sure, but the inference was, I'm not sure I believed you when you first said it. So this is a journey. It does take a while, so don't think it's a quick fix. That would be a serious mistake. So let's have a look at a couple more slides and to take us up to question time. And a very important thing that anybody listening, and bear in mind how much experience people are saying and how much people have mentioned in the registration question, the big thing you need to look at is, why are you doing this? As I say, I know I've said it a few times, but it's only because I see it happen so often. People that go in Agile and you say, why? Well, I don't know, it just seems like a good idea. It seems to be what everyone's doing. You need to be very clear what you want to get from Agile. Why you're doing it. You need to write down on a piece of paper, what will success look like? So 18 months from now, what do you want? Are you looking for, I don't know, something faster? Are you looking for something cheaper? Are you looking for fewer defects? Are you looking for a happier team? What does success look like? And I know some of you might be going all of the above, but actually these conflict with each other. So you need to be very clear what your measure is going to be to find out whether you've got to where you need to get to. How high up is support for this? This is one of the things that we're always trying to work with a customer. Only yesterday got an email about this. How can I move things quicker? And I said, move the demand for this and the support for this higher up your organization. Somebody needs to own the change. It cannot be an edge of desk activity. What is your culture like at your organization? You need to fit in with the culture. This can have quite large effects on how easy or how difficult it is to actually bring in Agile. And the next big thing, which, as I say, comes out of the assessment and the transformation planning, is exactly how do you do this? It isn't something, as I say, go on a training course and we're Agile. This is something you need to roll out. It's really change management or business change, if you're familiar with those sort of terms. Now, in terms of accreditations and certifications, I've just got a couple more slides. I just want to show you really the main ones that are out there at the moment. It's a growing area, but and the one main thing is a lot of people in the Agile community are anti-accreditation. They call themselves Agilistas, and they want to be free spirits, and they don't want any badges, and they don't want to conform. And I like free spirit, and I've got no problem per se with it. The only trouble is we find that organisations and employers want to know some credibility. So you're saying you're Agile, what badges have you got? So on the screen there are maybe the three main ones that we see at the moment. We offer training in all of these if anybody needs anything, but there's CSM, Certified Scrum Master, and that's aimed at people leading Scrum teams. The big new qualification from APMG is Agile PM, Foundation and Practitioner. There's 3 to 4 day courses. These are the people who brought Prince to the masses. They independently accredit Prince 2, and this is their fastest moving qualification, and they have something like 25 products in their portfolio. There's also DSDM Foundation accreditation, which is really good if you're trying to train the whole team up in Agile, not just a project manager or not just a business analyst. So final thought I want to leave you with, and you can use this slide if you like to go and talk to your boss, and it's really an important thing about how you go Agile. And the first thing is to realize that Agile is not about just chaos. If we take something like a Boeing 747 there, it's a very stable airplane, it's got big wings, it actually doesn't want to turn, it's very stable in the air, and if you try to respond to anything, it does actually take a little bit of hard work for a plane that big to turn right. Whereas the other picture here that's coming in is a fighter plane. It's a very, very dynamic Agile airplane. In fact, if you turn the computer off, the plane doesn't have any aerodynamic qualities and falls out of the sky. But it can be very agile. It can turn very quickly, it can roll, it can go up, down. If it's being attacked, it needs to be agile, it needs to respond. And the reason I'm trying to give you this final thought is just this question: which one, in your opinion, has the most governance? And I would suggest to you it's the fighter plane that has more control in it, more discipline, more governance. And what I want you to try and take from this is the fact if you're going Agile and you're thinking about being Agile, then the most important thing you've got to do is do it with structure, control and rigor. Don't throw out some of the disciplines you may have, like Prince 2, MSP, good governance, due diligence that you have there. You need to build Agile into this. It's not like oil and water, it's not either or. And we are finding quite a lot of stuff we're doing at the moment is actually repairing where people have gone into Agile on a bit of a whim and a bit casual and got into a bit of a mess. Agile without structure is quite dangerous, and at KRC we call that fragile Agile. Right, I'm now going to hand you back to Claire. And Claire, if you want to do the next slide, and then I will get ready for some questions coming in. So feel free to type in any questions.
Thanks, Keith. So just following on from the certifications that Keith's just gone through with you, our next Agile Project Management public course will take place in London on February the 11th, so get in touch if that's of interest. We've also got lots of certified Scrum Master courses which are going up on the website, so if that's something you're interested in, just drop me an email and I can send you the details. Next month our webinar will be on February the 22nd, same time as today at 12:30, and we're going to be focusing on how to combine Agile with Prince 2 next month. This is also going to coincide with the publication date for Keith's new white paper that he's just written for Best Management Practice on the subject of combining Agile with Prince 2. So we will have that white paper available as a download as well from our website. So just a few things there. Like Keith said at the beginning, KRC help organisations with your transition to Agile. We've got a variety of training courses, consultancy services, coaching, online support, all sorts of things that we can do to help you with that. We also offer an assessment or a project health check. Keith mentioned there about assessments. If any of you do want to have a look at the PDF that we've got, which outlines how we typically go about introducing Agile into an organisation, and that starts with an assessment, then just get in touch with me after the webinar. My email address will come up at the end and I'd be happy to send you a copy of that PDF. You can find all sorts of resources on our website at AgileKRC.com. Just click on resources on the top of the page and you'll see lots of links underneath. It'll say free downloads, webinars, knowledge hub, video wall. So hopefully we've got lots of things to help you out there. You can follow us on Twitter at AgileKRC.com, AgileKRC, and you can also join our DSDM group on LinkedIn if that's of interest as well. So I'm going to hand you back to Keith now. We've got lots of questions coming in. I'm not sure if we'll have time for all of them, but I'll hand you back to Keith and we will get through as many as we can. And like I say, do feel free to get in touch after the webinar.
Thanks, Claire. That's great. Yeah, we got loads and loads of questions, and to be straight with you, we're not going to get through them all, but I will get through as many as I can. We will finish in about 5 minutes, but what I will do, I will carry on for another couple of minutes just to see if I can get as many of these questions done. So without any further ado, I will just get straight in there. Matsios, you're saying, I've been told that Agile is mainly used for innovative projects. Is this true? Maybe in the early days, yes, but the short answer is no. You can use it on absolutely any project. One of the customers that I'm dealing with, and we're really enjoying it, is actually building a submarine. So if you can use it on that, and I've used it with the MOD, you can use it on anything. You might be a lot more creative and it would be very helpful on innovative, but please don't restrict your organizations to just innovative projects. Can Agile be applied during any phase of a project? For example, can you use it for testing and then use another methodology for implementation? That's from Tolu. The answer to that is yes, and the most important thing about your Agile is come at your Agile with a blended approach. So you might find certain disciplines and approaches you're using for testing. So let's assume it's software, you might have certain approaches there, but you might have other disciplines for how you might write an Agile business case. So my advice to you, Tolu, is use the whole Agile umbrella, if you like, to look at what you can use across the whole project and your whole product development areas. But be very careful you don't come up with what we call a patchwork quilt. If you come up with a lot of things that don't really join together, you just get a bunch of all sorts. You need a coherent, holistic view from start to finish, and if you did go for a specific methodology in testing, you would need to make sure that integrated with the other parts of your Agile methodology. Matthew, you mentioned Agile is moving into the project space via DSDM and Agile PM. Can you be Agile in a Prince 2 environment? Short answer is yes. A lot of people think Prince is a bureaucratic, heavyweight waterfall method, but it is only that if you've implemented it that way. Prince 2 is just a project management approach, and Agile clips into that really, really well. We do have a white paper that's currently been upgraded at the moment, but even the current version is very good at that. So there's a white paper on integrating DSDM with Agile PM, and I suggest you download that from the website or get in touch with Claire if you can't find it. Nicola is saying, can you elaborate on the decision to go Agile when initiating a project? Our organisation supports both Prince 2 and Growing Agile approach. Which way to go would be helpful? What we do at KRC is we've created something called an Agileometer, and what we do at the very early stage of a project is we look at the project and we look at the hallmarks that it is exhibiting, and we sort of then assess how Agile you can be. Now, Nicola, the very first thing you need to realize is that you mustn't make the decision a binary decision. You mustn't say this project is Agile and this project isn't. Maybe we use waterfall. Agile is a spectrum, and the Agileometer that we talk about, we normally go from a scale 0 to 5, where 5 is very, very Agile and 0 is, hey, maybe not. And the sort of things, I don't want to go into a lot of detail because it's quite a big thing really in general, but the sort of questions we're looking at is it technically complex? Have we got engagement with the business? Are the requirements a bit fuzzy? It's these sort of things that we can look at and say, this is lending itself to Agile a bit more than that other project. One particular customer I've got at the moment has got about 10 business areas, and 1 or 2 of them are very traditional, sorry to use this expression, but they're very sort of what I call stuck in the mud, and they're not really up for this Agile stuff. Yet the other 8 areas can't get enough of it. So when you're running a project, you might say to yourself, well, is it area A that's using it because they don't quite get it? Then you might need to dial back your Agile, how much you want to go Agile. So as I say, elaborating on the decision about going Agile is something you do a couple of times at the beginning of the project. And I often use the analogy of a gear in a car. It's a bit like going up a hill, saying, what gear am I going to use to go up this hill? Tim, you've said as a contractor, what is the best way to introduce the process to a client on a project? Well, if you're a contractor, go very careful because you don't want to limit your stay with the customer. And my advice to you would be to see how high up the organisation it goes and see what the appetite for Agile is. But the killer question is not really to sell them Agile, it's to ask them what problems they're having and do they think Agile can help. We go into organisations, we do one-day workshops all about Agile, and we make it clear to the customer, we're not going to sell you Agile. What we're going to do is we're going to see where you are, tell you what Agile is, and we're going to see whether that ticks any of your boxes to see whether you think, yeah, maybe we need to look at it. Agile has to be taken by the organisation. You cannot push Agile onto people. So see what the appetite's like and see where we go from there. Now, because of the amount of questions I've got, I'm going to carry on for another 2 minutes. We normally do like to finish on time because you might need to go for your lunch or something. I'll carry on for another 2 minutes, so if you do need to leave now, no problem. And but I will keep going because we've got so many. David's asking about, is Agile suitable for safety critical software? That's a really great question. The short answer is yes, but the key thing about anything you're doing in safety critical, and I've worked with, as I say, nuclear subs, nuclear power stations, the key thing is about exactness. If something has got to be exactly right 100%, then you can't really fix the deadline. So there's going to be certain parts of any safety critical project that are, if you like, non-negotiable, and I would go down the waterfall route. But you might find that there's, 3/4 of the rest of it is highly suited to Agile, like how the interface works or some of the back-end processes. So the short answer is you can use it on anything. Don't buy the argument that was used 10 years ago that you can't use it on safety critical, because every time you say that, you're going to find someone comes up to you and says, hang on a minute, we're actually using it for a nuclear power station. Again, I need to be careful here. If you're firing a missile that's worth 20 million quid, you can't really be using expressions like, well, it nearly went where it was supposed to go. You have to step back from certain things like that. I have to say you need to go careful in those areas, but please don't start from a position of no. A question from Steve: is there a place for risk registers, Gantt charts and highlight reports in Agile Scrum projects? The thing I really like about this question is that if you go and talk to pure Scrum people, you'll almost get the it's an irrelevant kind of question. Scrum is Scrum and it'll sort everything out for you. But it does if you've got a small team, you're in a product environment, and it's the to-do list type of work, maybe. But when you scale it up, we need to get back to some good old-fashioned disciplines that have been with us for years, things that Prince has brought to the marketplace. So if you're managing a project and you're using Agile and it's 6 months long, yes, you need a risk register. Yes, you might want to show progress as a Gantt chart. They're not ideal, to be honest, Gantt charts. I think I would use other ways of showing progress using some more Agile techniques. But things like highlight reports, checkpoint reports that you might have found from Prince, yeah, use them. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it. And what you're touching on there, Steve, is why I keep saying it's much better to move to a more structured approach to Agile if you're scaling it up. Because what might work for 4 people all around the same set of tables isn't necessarily Agile that's working there. It's normally the fact it's just a very small team with high-speed communication going on. So your question there is a good example of don't see them mutually exclusive. But a final point I want to make on that, which is really important, is that those are not in Scrum. You don't get a risk log in Scrum. You don't get a highlight report in Scrum. That's not a fault of Scrum. It's just Scrum is a low-level Agile technique that works at product delivery level, at the product delivery level. If you want to scale it up to run a project over 30, 40 people, you're going to need to bring some new disciplines in there that enable us to scale this thing up. Right, I am truly sorry for the amount of questions I haven't got to, but I think I've got to as many as I can in the time, and I know what it's like when you're time boxing certain things that you need to get back on with your day job. I know we've got people all over the world listening, so I don't know whether you're getting the snow that we are getting at the moment, and hopefully you're going to find yourselves all get home tonight, those that have got snow. But I've really enjoyed this webinar. I hope you've got a lot from it. We do really appreciate your feedback, and hope you enjoy the rest of your Friday, and thanks for attending the webinar.
Just one quick thing from me before I end the webinar. You can see Keith's email address on the screen at the moment. Unfortunately, I haven't put mine up there. So if anybody did want to get in touch after the webinar, particularly if you want a copy of this Agile Transformation PDF, then just send me an email to c.robinson@agilekrc.com. That's c.robinson@agilekrc.com. So I hope you all enjoyed the webinar, and hopefully see you next time.